What's going on, everybody? Jeff here. Welcome back to the channel. The plot begins to thicken as more information gets exposed. Now, personally, before I get into it and how this correlates with what I'm going to talk about, I do want to mention that I personally think that Sam Bankman-Fried is going to try to pull down everyone he can with him. Now, two things are going to happen. One, a lot of information is going to be released and a lot of people are going to be in some serious trouble, or the latter, okay, which seems to be a common event as of really the past 10 years, or even longer, okay, is that the media is going to hide this up and kind of sweep this under the rug. There's going to be certain politicians that were involved with this, certain high-end, high tax-paying officials, high political donating, okay, parties that are going to be protected. That is a possibility. We've seen that happen, numerous times. It seems like it happens more and more as of lately. The latter could certainly happen, but I want to kind of uncover everything and also talk a little bit about how this could affect not only the entire stock market, which you mentioned in previous videos, but also talk about AMC. And I'm also going to mention the recent disconnect on AMC Ape. So let's get right into it. First off, take a look at the entire market. Okay, we had the data come out on that Thursday, massive rip to the upside. Really seen that consolidation, okay, just below and around that $400 level on SPY. Now, the producer price index came out today, which I believe was actually a little bit priced in. Now, generally when CPI will beat, the producer price index is a little bit priced in, but it is showing that prices are now really getting passed off onto consumers, which is a, lagging effect. Obviously, businesses will accrue the expenses, and it takes a little bit of time for them to, really balance their books before they begin to pass it on to consumers. We've seen that happening. A little bit of news that happened overseas, okay, with Russia and Poland causing the market to spike down a little bit to only quickly recover. You can see where we've, come all the way since November 10th, pretty much a straight line. But let's take a look at AMC, which is still holding this level really nicely. Now, earnings came out and it's really no news. Adam Aron does everything he can to try to hype up investors, talk about, something new that he's, implementing. And really, it seems like there's a little bit bid up into earnings and then it just sells off after earnings, as he really tends to underdeliver as of late. That's just been the common theme for earnings specifically. We saw that a little bit of sell-off happen, that $5 base, and it's really been nothing ripping. Had that, that halt happened yesterday right at open. Okay, shorts just continue to pile on from the position, especially when it moves just a little bit too quickly. But we're still basing, okay, which is a little bit of a surprise. It seems like whenever we get that first halt, it's just that first halt and it's kind of done. So we begin to formulate a little bit of a base happening, and volume is slowly increasing, even though today across the entire market volume was a little bit slower. But take a look at APE. Now, obviously the sentiment is the same with these, two tickers, okay? APE's valuation is backed off of AMC. Obviously we saw that, which is as soon as the dividend was released, the stock price of AMC immediately plummeted, okay? The valuation gets based off of the company's earnings, their price earnings ratios, and numerous other factors that have to do with the sole company. However, you see the same thing happening Wednesday, Thursday, a little bit of a rip into Monday. Here was the halt on AMC, and it just sold off, and it sold off very hard. It was sitting at probably about a high pre-market, about that 180, came all the way down to that 150, began to base even lower, and here we are, dropping even further. So we really haven't seen a bit of that disconnect, okay? Now this brings me to what I want to talk about and kind of wrap it in as a whole. So there's been a lot of talk about the FTX, okay? There's been a lot of speculation, all right? Because obviously, there are so many things that are unknown, all right? And I really, as much as I want to, sit there, start to read information, soak in, what people are saying, soak in what I'm seeing and hearing and so forth, and try to formulate, exactly what is happening there. This is much bigger, okay, than anybody can wrap their head around as of right now. It's only beginning to unfold, okay? And I'm sure there's a lot of information that the media, okay, and also journalists are really trying to hide. So there is a lot of speculation happening with this. Just keep that in mind going forward, okay? But this article states right here that the exchange FTX could owe more than 1 million creditors, all right? Now, this isn't just people, but this is also organizations. And if you take a moment to just sit back and be like, wait a minute, think about all the people, not only some of these other major YouTubers that promoted this, okay, but also you look at, some professional athletes, some high businessmen, people on Shark Tank. I mean, the list goes on and on and on for the amount of hands that were inside this, let alone, like I said, the politicians, okay, the individuals who are the ultra wealthy who can donate a lot of money to either political party, okay, that wants to try to, help save them. A lot of things that can happen here. So what I had talked about was, how are funds going to react to this? Who's going to be affected? Okay, how many margin calls are going to happen? Who's going to have to liquidate other assets? All right, in order to kind of make those requirements after losing millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay, what has been shown, to us is somewhere around there an $8 billion shortfall, and it could be far, far greater than that. It's, it's almost watching this in slow motion. Okay, and while I do believe that this is not something as big as, what happened with mortgage-backed securities back in 2008, okay, and that type of bubble could be much bigger than what we're seeing on the surface as of this far. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So I talked about how this could affect what blue chips are going to have to be sold, who's going to be sold. And I said, you know what, we're getting to a point now where, third quarter, filings are in for, for AMC. I was like, let me take a look at what's happening. Now this is delayed, right? But it just gives us a little bit of a preview of slowly what is happening. So I have this number highlighted right here of 141 million shares long. Okay, now this number got as high as about 187 million shares. Institutions had held long, and obviously, BlackRock had sold, about 17 million of those. So that does take up, a huge chunk. And you could see in this graph over here, there was that massive drop down, but then it's slowly starting to leak. But you're slowly starting to see some of these funds leaving, and they're not only leaving, on the long side, there is a little bit on the short side. Okay, they are covering some of their downside positions. They're covering some of their put hedges, and you can scroll through and take a look at some of the big players that are really starting to readjust. And if you're a lot of these funds, when you see what they're selling at, what their average cost was, when you dive into a little bit further, that's where things begin to shake up a little bit. Now, Goldman Sachs had sold well over 1 million shares as of recently. And this was obviously when AMC was continuing to pull the downside. The entire market was pulling to the downside, but they've also covered a lot of their put positions, right? And that's slowly what you're starting to see. Even Citadel has favored the call side over the put side. So it kind of puts into perspective of what is potentially happening on the adjustment side. Are we going to see the push inside the high growth? Because high growth was the one, not only high growth, but also, all your speculative stocks such as AMC are the ones that are heavily shorted during this time. Are you going to start liquidating some of the blue chips? Okay, some of the ones that are favored, such as your Tesla, your Apple, your Microsoft, and so forth. This is only the beginning. The adjustment will take time to happen. Now, when it comes from the overall market, I've mentioned to everybody inside the group where I see just the entire structure, okay, and the setup of this latest bear market rally, what the downside looks like. We're rejecting off that 200 EMA on the daily, okay? And like I said, you're continuing to see that same pattern happening. Now, I do this a little bit, closer on the future side because, like I said, the chart's just a little bit more fluid, all right, because of the overnight action. And like I said, it's a much bigger area than, looking at the SPY ETF. But like I said, those numbers align very closely to about where we're at for the upside. So it'll be really interesting to see. We'll continue to cover this. And like I said, guys, that is going to be it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.